want to change the world? Start off by making your bed. If you make your bed every morning, you will have accomplished the first task of the day. It will give you a small sense of pride, and it will encourage you to do another task, and another, and another. And by the end of the day, that one task completed will have turned into many tasks completed. Making your bed will also reinforce the fact that the little things in life matter. If you can't do the little things right, you'll never be able to do the big things right. And if by chance you have a miserable day, you will come home to a bed that is made, that you made. And a made bed gives you encouragement that tomorrow will be better.
Might not make that great, but yeah, we were talking about the judges and what we think was the bad decision on birthright citizenship, and I think I think we all agree that they kicked that one, didn't kick it down the road, but.
I've got a long comment on that, but
yeah,
it's only an informed comment, so you probably don't want to hear it.
Yeah, well, if we have time at the end, let's get into that, because. But I'd like to start out, and I want to welcome you guys. It's good to see all of you. You look great. I tried to get up our America 250 background here to celebrate our big birthday this weekend. It's 200. I was saying earlier, Ken, 250 years is a long time, and a lot can happen in 250 years. And I'm sure we all have. I could dig up about 3 or 4 stories. I guess I'd start out by saying probably the number 2 events that stick in my head, the 3 events, are the Revolutionary War, the Civil War, and World War II, as really significant things that happened during the 250 years, beginning with the Revolutionary War, of course, and the Civil War was such a historical thing, and then World War II saved us from the brink of disaster with the Nazis trying to take over the world. So, and I say take over the world because they would have never stopped in Europe or England. They would have kept going. So, anyway, I have a little story. My story is about the 101st Airborne, the Screaming Eagles, and some information that people may not know about from World War II, and I found a nice video that I'll include the link below. Paul's got a video from a pastor that's very good, and we're going to play that. And he's got some things to say about that. And Ken, whatever your story is, you can start now, or Zack can start now with the first thing, and then we'll get into ours later. Ours are kind of productions because we got videos to play. So I told him I have to share the videos, and I'm not very good at sharing. Either the video works and there's no sound, or there's sound and there's no video. So I've been practicing, and I hope I get it right. So
good.
Ken or Zack, if you want to start. And how have you been, Ken? Let us know how you've been. How's your weather been?
Oh, it's been warm, but good.
Good.
Although in American Fork, Utah, at our second home up there, it snowed last week.
Really? Wow. I saw it snowed in Yellowstone last night.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I saw this. Yeah. So that's not surprising. Yeah. Yeah. Hey, what about the fire in Sedona? Is that bad?
I heard one of the fire captains say that at least a couple days ago, they were still saying 0% containment, but that it had not expanded. They were still saying 0% containment because they wanted to be conservative as to, if the wind shifted or whatever, there was a line that, could be problematic. But he said it's not as bad as 0% containment sounds. He says it's not expanding much, but I can see the smoke from my front porch.
Yeah, no evacuations, or nobody's had to leave their homes?
There have been a few evacuations.
Okay. Yeah, that's not a good place to have a fire. So
yeah, no.
which there's no good place to have a fire where you're burning homes down, but
Yeah.
that particular area is not good. So.
Yeah.
So, okay. Well, I told the guys before, Ken, I got a little note from Jeff. He's not going to be with us. He's with his family back east. He's traveling and getting away from
Okay.
things. So he did send me a note about what he wanted to talk about. So I'm going to read that now. I'll start out with Jeff's. He said, I just arrived back east with the family, just being together with everyone. I'll try to make next Thursday, but unsure of schedule. So he said, I'd probably share the story of Patrick Henry at St. John's Church, where he gave his liberty or death speech, and the American mindset was born right then and there. Liberty or death was the final transition from the colonial to the American mindset. And now we have readopted the colonial mindset in modern day America, COVID being the evidence of how colonial we have become. And that's what he was going to talk about. So he wants to get back to the liberty mindset. So liberty or death. So that's from Jeff Hooch. And Ken or Zach, if you'd
Zach,
like.
go ahead.
Yeah, Zach, go ahead and start and tell us your 250-year, what you think is a big story.
Well, I just lost my picture. Can you still see me?
No, I still see you. Yeah, you're good. Yeah.
All right. I've got a blank screen and it says join the meeting.
Okay. Well,
You're in.
no, you're
still
on
here.
and we hear you good and we see you. So you're fine.
Well, as you all know, I was a Border Patrol agent.
Right.
And when I was at the Border Patrol Academy, we were taught that birthright citizenship was not law, that it was a government policy. And the reason being is when the 14th Amendment was ratified, there was no such thing as an illegal alien. However, in 1924, the Congress made Native Americans by birth in the United States citizens by an act of Congress. And the flow from that is there's been revisions to the immigration laws several times since 1924 when that law was enacted. Up until the Immigration and Nationality Act of the 1950s, where Congress chose not to address the subject. And they chose not to address it in IRA, the Immigration Reform and Control Act. I think it was of 1996. We did get a ruling out of that, or a law out of that, about how we should treat minors. But they would not address birthright citizenship. So that tells me that Congress knows that the only way that birthright citizenship can be legal is if Congress passes a law making it so, or passes a law making it not so. And the Supreme Court, maybe a left hand around the corner of a gray curtain, decided, though they didn't say so, that it's up to Congress to make that decision, not the president.
There you go. So I would comment, and we'll probably get Ken. There's Ken. Ken's back. So I would comment about that, Zach, and say I heard. Trying to think the attorney's name that he just turned himself into a Republican. The big attorney he was a big liberal. Now he's come to the right side here. Dershowitz, is it Allen Dershowitz?
Oh.
Does that sound right?
I didn't know he.
Yeah. He's anyway, he said, I saw him on an interview yesterday, and he said that Congress is going to have to define the term in the Constitution to the jurisdiction of, right? That's what they need to do. They need to clarify that, because that's what is getting twisted by the SCOTUS in this whole thing. And that's what he believes. And so he thinks Congress can do that. They don't need to go through a new amendment process, which would be, we're talking years down the road for it for a constitutional amendment. So Congress needs to get on board and clarify subject to the jurisdiction of, and he says they can do that. And so we'll see what they're going to do. And I think from what I've seen on Truth Social from the Republican congressmen, they're all pretty much agreed that this was really a bad decision and might be as bad as the Dred Scott decision, which historically Lincoln was not a big fan of the Dred Scott decision. So matter of fact, he was such not a fan that he ignored it. And anyway, that would be my comment about it. Paul or Ken, you want to comment on birthright citizenship or anything?
Well, yeah, as a matter of fact, there's a representative named Mereno, Merino, who went back evidently into the records and found an old Harry Reid bill dated 1993 that establishes who can be a U.S. citizen and the birthright effects of that citizenship. And he's bringing that back to life and going to put it on the table and see where it goes from there. But the idea is that it does establish who is and who isn't a U.S. citizen by birth. And he's almost, you can almost say he's doing it tongue in cheek because it's a Harry Reid bill.
Yeah.
And it will be so nice to reach down the throat of all those Democrats and pull out a real good answer. And just see how they turn on their old buddy Harry.
Yeah. You might have to reach down pretty far with that bunch.
Yeah.
So any comment, Ken?
No, I totally agree with what you said, and I'm aware of. I heard the same story today that Merino is going to introduce the exact bill that Harry Reid had introduced 30 plus years ago, and I was always cautious or concerned that the president's unilateral executive order, which I'm not a fan of executive orders, frankly, because I really became aware of them. Well, I wasn't a fan of all the executive orders that Bill Clinton did, and one of the people that worked in Bill Clinton's administration was Janet Napolitano, and then Janet Napolitano becomes governor of Arizona, and I'm president of the Senate during the first 4 years of Janet's governorship, and she was doing all these executive orders. So I was always concerned about the definition of the declaration of the effect of the 14th Amendment by executive order. But I completely agree that not every word of the Constitution and or the 27 amendments is defined therein, but that's the job of the Congress. That's the job of the people's representatives to define those terms. And so I was always concerned that Trump doing what he did by executive order was one way or another going to be unsuccessful. And so I strongly believe in what you just described, Don, and I'm pleased to see that the Republicans in Congress, I would hope there would be a few Democrats as well who not too many years ago had leaders like Harry Reid introducing legislation that would define it in the correct way. And it's not the way that it was interpreted by the Supreme Court a few days ago. So, no, I agree completely with what you said.
Okay.
I don't want to go down that rabbit hole, but in line with what Ken just said about executive orders, it has always been my belief that the executive orders dealt with the executive department. And that was as far as they went. The executive could issue orders within the executive branch. And that's as far as it was supposed to go. So I agree with Ken in that sense that an executive order that affects bus routes in Chicago shouldn't have any effect in my mind. So I'll leave it there.
Yeah, good point.
Well,
Okay, so Ken, what would be your 250-year story? What can you think of that you really stands out in your mind?
well, I bring this to me, the miracle of America um, is its people. And for me, one of the defining aspects of my life is meeting people who made a difference in the founding and the maintaining of America. Obviously, I've never met anybody who was part of the founding of America.
You know, Ronald Reagan?
No.
Teddy Roosevelt. And by the
Well,
way,
I
they
think,
opened up Teddy Roosevelt's library. What is it, the 4th? They're going to open on the 4th. Did you see that pictures of that library? It's really something, huh?
well, and I saw a news story the other day, or today, in fact, maybe, that somebody was criticizing Trump that he had referenced having asked Teddy Roosevelt a question when Teddy Roosevelt died 25 years before Trump was born, or anyway, something. And so obviously Trump never personally talked to Teddy Roosevelt, but he made some reference as though he had.
Yeah.
And
Well, you can
but
talk to him in the library. They have him in AI,
AI, and you can talk to him.
and you
Okay.
can talk to him and ask him questions. Yeah. So
Well, I watched Abraham Lincoln in Disneyland
that
50
was
years ago.
that was
That was
terrible.
that was terrible. I wasn't impressed. But to me, the magic and the miracle of America is its people. And for some reason, I cannot get out of my head the fact that several years ago, when I was the Secretary of State of Arizona, I went to a veterans event and got to meet a man named Jack Holder. And I think I've mentioned Jack's name on our program before.
Yeah.
But Jack and I became friends and we played golf together. He's one of the few men I know who could shoot well below his age. He played golf into his late 90s and could still shoot in the low 80s. Sometimes even a 76, 78. I mean, he was a great golfer. But Jack was at Pearl Harbor on December 7th, 1941. And so when you talk about the three defining events in America's history, the Revolution, the Civil War, and World War II, here's a man, I'm not even close to any of those three events. I was born in 1959,
Yeah.
14 years after the ending of World War II. So I only knew World War II from history books. But as a Secretary of State, I met a man who was at Pearl Harbor on December 7th, 1941. And then he went on to become a pilot. He was in the PBY that found the Japanese aircraft carriers northeast of Midway.
What a treat.
And
Huh?
if you've ever watched any of the documentaries about Midway, that was the turning point of World War II.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And the turning point of that battle was who could find the other's naval forces first.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I don't think that the Japanese thought, the Japanese plan, Yamamoto's plan, was that they would attack and take Midway, and then Halsey would send Nimitz would send Halsey out there with three carriers, and they would lie in wait to, destroy our three carriers or four carriers. I don't think Yamamoto had any idea that we had intercepted their radio transmissions, and we knew that they were somewhere within 100-mile radius of Midway. And here I am as Secretary of State of Arizona in 2018 or 15, I think it was 14 or 15, meeting a man who was in the PBY one of the 16 PBYs that was sent out to try to find the Japanese naval forces and found them.
Isn't that great? Yeah.
And then later he was a B-24 bomber pilot in Europe, and to get to meet people who were involved in those kinds of things,
Yeah.
to me is the miracle of America. Yeah. And so, yeah, I could talk about things from history that are defining moments, but to me, what makes America are the people, and to know that. I think it's fascinating that on our 250th birthday, we're right smack in the middle of the World Cup, and people from all over the world are in America. And you look at these celebrations at all of these events where these matches are being held, and there are people from every country, every race, every religion, every background, and they're enjoying celebration. And you've got Scottish bagpipers, even after their team lost, playing their bagpipes down the streets of Atlanta or wherever they were. Yeah. And you've got other cultures exhibiting their culture. And that's what America is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All of them enjoying our freedoms.
Yeah.
And they all love it. And they love our food too. They're all talking about the food.
They're all talking about the things that we know America to be. Yeah. But the press and the forces that want to destroy America have tried to portray America, and successfully done so, portrayed America as something totally different.
Oh, yeah.
And now all these people are saying, whoa, this is America. We've got every color, every race, every religion mingling together and cheering for their teams and having a good time and respecting each other. And to me, that's America. That's what defines America.
Yeah, agree with you. Yeah, it's individual stories. Every event, historical event, is really created by the people that were there at the time, right? And taking part in it. So yeah, it's we do have an exceptional country, and the people are special, and we nobody can ever tell any of us different. The people that really don't believe in America, it's just sad, and it's something that I don't understand it. There's some homeowners association in San Diego that's forbidding people there to fly their American flags outside their houses. And of course, Congress passed a law that said they can't restrict you flying your flag. But
we had homeowners associations in Arizona that tried to do that.
Yeah, I know.
Every year during the 10 years I was in the Arizona legislature, we had to address overreaches by little pockets of power, people on HOA boards or whatever who forgot what America was and said, "Oh, we're going to tell other people what they can and can't do."
Yeah,
and their rights are going to come from us, the HOA association.
Yeah,
which is as ridiculous as people who. I think Tim Walz, governor of Minnesota, said it 3 months ago, that the rights of Americans come from the government. Baloney.
Yeah. Him and
not
Senator,
come from the government.
Yeah, and Senator Tim Kaine, right?
Yeah, Tim Kaine.
Yeah, both of them.
Maybe it was Kaine. Yeah, maybe it was Kaine.
I think it was both of them. But yeah, and you I see flags all over the villages. The villages is just going crazy with the retired people. I don't think they'd ever even dare to attempt to tell people not to fly their flag. If they told them not to fly their flag, there'd be 16 flags out in front of their house the next day. So yeah, but I don't get that either. And they've got people have a screw loose. I mean, they really do. There's something wrong with you when you're offended by the American flag. And of course, that all comes back to President Trump, right? They don't like President Trump. And when they see people fly a flag now in front of their house, they say, well, they support President Trump. So we don't, we got to fix that. We can't be for the flag. It's like they put up a message on Facebook that I saw that said, if President Trump cured cancer, then it had a bunch of Democrats standing under him with signs saying, we want cancer and bring cancer back. And, that's how ridiculous they are. They're just, they're really insane.
But being offended by the American flag didn't start as an anti-Trump idea.
Right. That's true.
One of my favorite moments as a boy was watching an LA Dodgers baseball game.
Go Dodgers.
Go
Blue.
Yes. Go Diamondbacks. But my grandfather on the Bennett side was an avid Dodgers fan. I can remember watching the Dodgers game when two spectators somehow got out onto the outfield.
Yeah.
And they had an American flag down on the ground, and they had some matches and lighter fluid and they were about to light it.
Yeah.
And Rick Monday, one of the outfielders for the Dodgers
picked it up,
came swooping in, grabbed the American flag out from underneath them, and took it off to some to the dugout and saved it. Yeah. I never watched. He was always one of my favorite players after that.
He was playing for the Cubs then. And
was it the Cubs? Maybe it was the Cubs.
He was playing for the Cubs in Dodger Stadium, but later he got traded to the Dodgers. So he ended up being on the Dodgers. And of course, he was always a hero for all the Dodger fans from that moment on. So, but at the time he was playing for the Cubs. But that was a great moment. I remember too, when a guy ran onto a Baltimore Colt football field, tried to take the football away between, all the linemen are there and the defense and the offense. And Mike Curtis was playing for the Colts. And this guy picked up that ball and started running with it. And Mike Curtis just crushed him. He knocked him unconscious. And you don't take, you don't run around with the American flag. You don't take the football away from the football teams. That's not a smart thing to do. Great story though. That World War II story, Ken, was just fabulous. I don't know how many Pearl Harbor veterans there are alive now. There can't be more than a handful. I've heard, I think there were, I don't know if there are any of them at the ceremony this year, but I think it's less than 10 is what I heard. Less than 20. It's a very small
ranks are
number.
thinning.
Yeah. So, okay. Well, let's get on with, Paul, you want to go into your, shall I play your video and then you can talk about it?
Yeah. Why don't you go ahead and start that?
Okay. Let me see if I can get it started here. Hold on, you guys, bear with me. Please be patient.
Okay, you're sharing the screen now.
Okay.
You begin to look at those pastors that were known as the Black Robe Regiment of the colonial effort to liberate the colonies from British rule. It was England who named us the Black Robe Regiment. King George III announced that the secret weapon to the American cause was not the citizen soldier, it was the pulpits that must be shut up to get this idea out of their minds. And he attempted to bribe the pulpits in colonial America. He attempted to shut them up. Then he had a law passed where all the sermons had to be sent to England for censorship and approval and then shipped back before they could be preached in those pulpits. And there was a great number of those pastors that rose up and said, no way, we're going to obey God rather than man. And the Black Robe Regiment preached the freedom in the liberty that you and I enjoy today. And we need to wake up like never before. None of us wanted to go up to Sacramento and stand there and do what we did. We've all got lives and we've got things to do, and I've got a church to pastor. But the hour has come upon us. It's been thrust upon us to stand for righteousness. I would assume that every pastor would speak out and say, yes, we must stand for righteousness. I don't care if you're a Baptist, a Lutheran, a Methodist, non-denominational. I would think if you've read your Bible, you would say, yes, of course, we must stand for righteousness. Then here's our question. Over 3,000 of God's people showed up, but why were there 7 pastors only? And my good friend Frank Turek pointed it out correctly. There should have been 7,000 pastors in Sacramento and 7 congregants instead of it being flipped around. That's got to change. And the announcement that I make today is this. America has got to the place where it's at because of pulpits. It's because of pastors. That's my message today. It's not to the flock. It's not to the politician. It's not to the Democrat or the Republican. It is to the pulpits. It is to those who name themselves pastors. And any group that has control over the ministry of a church. We have seen a pandemic sweep through our nation, and it had its effect, no doubt about it. But little did we know that the bright side of the pandemic would be that it would expose a bunch of vacant pulpits of pulpiteers that did nothing but play games and write books and craft sermonettes, as Spurgeon said, for Christianettes. And the hour has come. Church, listen very, very quickly. I'm just asking pastors. I'm not speaking to any of you right here, right now. I'm speaking to the pastors that might watch this. What do we see on our watch right now? If we really believe the Word of God and that you and I have been brought to the kingdom for such a time as this, my question to the ministry across the United States is, what do we see right now in our watch? What are we seeing? That's a grand assumption. Are pastors watching what's happening on our watch? We are commissioned to watch what's happening. It's not, listen, this stuff about just preach the gospel. We don't get involved in politics. That's how we got to this godless condition that our state is in right now. Because there is no way, there is no separation from sacred to secular. God knows nothing of this. Isaiah walked through the courts of power in Israel. David was the king. I read this morning that it was Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego that told the king, listen, no disrespect, king, but you want us to bow to your idols? Sorry. And if our God has us burn in your furnace, so we burn. But we must follow our God. And there's a time to follow God, and now's the time to do that.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, good. It come through okay?
Yeah, that came through. It was a little shaky at the first, but it came through towards the end there.
Okay.
Anyway, that's what I wanted to talk about. Was what he was discussing is the lack of God in our country today. I think if you see what's going on, you'll see that we're losing that part of our psyche that founded this country. But so I wanted to talk about the Black Robe Regiment. So let me do that. During the Revolutionary War, the clergy in the colonies were very active in the liberty movement. Pastors would preach sermons quoting scripture to emphasize the importance of being free to worship as one pleased. Their hyperactivity in this quest to spur their congregants to action became noticeable to the government of England. So powerful were these admonitions to break away from England that they caught the attention of the British military. The military finally came to calling them the Black Robe Regiment as an appreciation of their military might as a driving force to propel the colonies to actively exercise their physical strength in combat by taking up arms against the king. So who are America's Black Robe Regiment today? Today, America's Black Robe Regiment is composed of pastors and laymen, patriots, I fully support the idea that it is the responsibility of every Christian pastor and layperson to preach the whole counsel of God. For years, churches and pastors were cowed by the Johnson Amendment, the IRS exception to the 401c3 tax exemption offered by the IRS to churches. The Johnson Amendment was initiated by Lyndon B. Johnson after he was opposed by pastors in his congressional district who regularly preached sermons advising their congregations not to vote for him. Initially, the reluctance of pastors to advise their congregation on the suitability of a candidate was financial. If they stayed away from politics, the IRS wouldn't bother them. This rule remained in effect until recently. But many pastors are reluctant these days to actually take a stand and advise their congregation on which candidates are God-fearing and honest, generally for the same reason. Some pastors feel that they must walk a fine line between doing God's work and keeping the pews full. A hard stand on advising their congregations on which candidates meet the criteria of God-fearing and honest could lead to a shrinking congregation and reduced collection plates. However, this has not been shown to be the case in reality. Churchgoers want strong leadership from the pulpit. So what is the goal of America's Black Robe Regiment? The goal of America's Black Robe Regiment today is to awaken pastors to their role to lead their flocks to voting both as a civic responsibility and a religious obligation, as voting is an act of stewardship in protecting God's investment in our republic. Pastors should be directing their congregations to make themselves aware of the orientation of candidates and guide them in choosing which candidates will be most likely to support the Christian ideals that honor God and will be most oriented to maintaining our constitutional republic. So what do we need to do to help build America's Black Robe Regiment and support it in its goals? We need to spread the word that America's Black Robe Regiment exists and is growing in strength, to spread the word that pastors have both the education and experience to lead their flocks in the direction of a more God-oriented government. Anyone who has actually studied our country's history is most likely aware that there's nowhere in our Constitution can be found the words separation of church and state. This is a leftist misuse of the words in a letter from Thomas Jefferson to the Danville Baptist Church, wherein, to allay their concerns that the new federal government might want to control what and how they could conduct their religious services, President Jefferson spoke of a wall separating the church from the state in regards to control. He never meant that our government could or should separate itself from God and divine providence, which was so obvious in our recent victory over the tyranny of England. The following is an unattributed quote. They called the king into accounting for his disregard of the law. They told their people not to yield before the threats. For God established rulers to protect the rights of man and ordained government to fit into his plan to maintain his people's liberty. Liberty to exercise all their God-given rights granted to them at the time of their birth. The right to speak, bear arms, and pray, to worship God and say from the law that we will keep our people free through the jury will guard our liberty. We need such preacher men today to show our people the way to redeem their lost liberty. The fires of hell cannot prevail against one man who will take a stand from the pulpit, expose tyranny, and teach his people liberty. As General Boykin said, pastors need to be warriors. For more information on America's Black Robe Regiment, you can visit their website at brrusa.org or contact Pastor Bill Cook at blackroperev@leader.com. And Don, I'd appreciate it if you put that down in your notes at the bottom of the show today.
I'll do that. Yeah, I'll put the link in the note. Sure, absolutely. So, yeah, great.
That's
Thanks, Paul.
That's my rant today.
Yeah, it's a dilemma for pastors. It shouldn't be, but it is. I know our pastor of our church is a very in evangelical free church. He's very conservative. Patty and I have sat down with him one-on-one and talked to him about politics, and we know where he stands, but he's still, if it's a policy thing, he will come out publicly and say something about it. Like when they were trying to pass an abortion amendment in Florida, he came out, sent out an email to the congregation about how to vote, to defeat the amendment. And we had some church members quit the congregation because he sent that email out about, stopping abortion. So it can happen by, some people just, you can't reason with them about something like that. And they don't want their pastor We still have a problem with our church. We display the American flag on some certain days, but not year round, and we're trying to get that changed. Some people believe that the flag detracts from worshiping our God, and I never believe that. I believe that it's the country we live in, it's where our church exists, and we're free because of that to worship who we please. So I think the flag's appropriate on the diocese along with the Christian flag. But anyway, your guys' comments. Zack, Ken, anything you want to say?
Well, I would encourage the four of us and all of our listeners. The last couple of days, I've been listening to Glenn Beck. He's had a couple of, and I don't know what his program is called. I picked it up off of Facebook somewhere. But you can go to Glenn Beck's. I think he has a YouTube channel. I think he has all kinds of different things. But the last 2 days, he focused on the summer of 1776 and the events leading up to the Declaration of Independence on July 4th. But he reminded his listeners of some very critical things. And one of them was the recollection that the war had been going on for more than a year. The early battles of the Revolutionary War were in April of 1775. So the war had been going on, and it was still a huge question as to whether the majority of Americans would support leaving England and declaring our independence. And he talked about the gathering in Philadelphia on June 7th. June 7th is when, what was the guy's name? Lee from Virginia stood up and made the motion to leave England, and that we are now 13 free colonies. And it was seconded by John Adams. But he said the room went quiet because about half the delegates were scared to death, and all of them were scared to death about voting on this right now. And they weren't sure it was going to pass. They knew they needed all 13 colonies. They didn't know if they had a majority of the votes from the delegations of all the 13 colonies. There was one colony, I don't even think a representative had got there by that time. But anyway, he said one of the most important decisions they made was to postpone things for about a month. They said, if we're going to declare our independence, first of all, we're going to have all the words right and ready so that we know what we voted on. So they not only postponed the vote until July 3rd, but they appointed a committee of 5 people on June 11th to write the Declaration. And it was John Adams and Ben Franklin and 2 others. And then they thought they needed a 5th one. So they decided somehow on a young redheaded lawyer from Virginia who had almost never said anything in the Constitutional Convention or in the debate in the Congress. Thomas Jefferson. He said almost nothing, but was assigned to be on the committee of 5 to write the Declaration. And when the 5 got together, Jefferson deferred to Adams, who was the engine of the revolution, and said, John, you should write this. But John Adams knew that he was too much of a lightning rod, and that if he was known as the author of the Declaration, half of the country would oppose it just because it was him. Almost like the Trump derangement syndrome we have today. Adams, even though he was the engine of the revolution, he knew that he was. And he said, no, Thomas, you've got to write this. Now, Jefferson had just lost his mother to death. His wife was ill. He was he was a wreck. And yet, over the next 3 weeks, he writes the Declaration. But Glenn Beck pointed out, and this is where I'm going to Paul's point here, the Black Robe Regiment. Glenn Beck pointed out that this 3-week hiatus where all the delegates went back to their colonies, he said what made the difference was the pastors in the churches who started talking about, and had been, I'm sure, for quite some time, we need to declare independence. And it was the pastors of the churches, Glenn Beck reminded in the last couple of days of these things I've been listening, that turned the tide of the people to supporting independence. And so then when they came back on July 3rd, it was actually supposed to be signed on July 3rd, but it ended up being delayed one day, and it was signed on July 4th. They had the written declaration, and it happened. But, signing that document was like signing their death warrant.
Yeah. Yeah, and it was their death warrant. Yeah.
And I mean, there was no guarantee that it was going to turn out the way it turned out. Yeah. But Beck points out that it was the pastors in the 13 colonies that changed the tone, changed the underlying tone of the American people to support independence.
There you go.
And that's one of the things that I wanted to bring up to this is it is the pastors who have the key to our psyche, if you will, to orient us to do the right thing. There was a pastor named Muhlenberg who gave his sermon and then took off his black robe, and underneath was his colonial military uniform. He was a colonel in the Continental Army, rose to major general and fought at Bunker Hill and places like this. But as he got off his sermon, he said, there's a time for peace and a time for war. And he said, this is a time for war, took off his robe and said, who's with me? Got up and walked out of the church. He had a drummer boy standing outside the church playing drum beats, martial music on the drum. And 130 members of his congregation followed him out and signed up to join the army that day. And then another almost 150 the next day got in and started following him down to, I forget where he went to the first battle, but it was that quick and that harsh. But that was there's a man putting his money where his mouth is.
Yeah.
There you go. Any comment, Zack?
Well, when you look back at history, and especially in your family, and your grandfather was in the Spanish-American War. Your uncle was assigned to a carrier out of Pearl Harbor in 1941. His older brother was shot down over France right after the invasion. Another uncle was on a minesweeper in Tokyo Harbor at the end of the war with Japan. And your father was an artilleryman in Germany. Your next door neighbor fought in the Battle of the Bulge. His brother was the invasion of Sicily and Italy. And you realize that what you had was the result of what other people had preserved. Not so much what they gave you. It was already there.
Yeah.
And you realized it was worth preserving.
Were you describing yourself, Zack?
Maybe. And then my grandmother was a Scott Highlander. Well, she was born in this country, but her family was Scott Highlanders, and they brought the Anglican Communion to the United States. It was the reason they left Scotland, because it was kind of unpopular with the king at the time. And she always claimed that her children and grandchildren were genetically predisposed to be Anglican. and we're all RH positive. No, RH negative. So there's no monkeying around in the family. We just don't do that. We go straight to the point. And my grandmother always held that the Constitution was spirit driven. It was the Holy Spirit had the hand.
Yeah. And it was.
Amen.
Yeah. Amen.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it sure was.
And she talked about people that had gifts of the Spirit.
Yeah.
And she would identify people specifically by name and what gift it was they had and how it contributed to the better overall of the community. So that's where I came from.
Yeah. Yeah.
And people say, well, how come you look at everything different? And I says, well, I have to let them answer that because they won't believe what I'm going to tell them.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I think that every one of us, and I know I was put here for a reason, and some of the reasons that have passed before me that I had chances to act upon, it was very clear it was put before me to do.
Yeah. Sure.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So when you go through that and you live that, kind of like Ken Bennett, you get a deeper understanding of where we are and why.
Yeah.
And you don't want it to go away because you know it's the right way.
It's the right way. And you know the sacrifices that were made to get there, right?
And it's because they believed.
All that blood, sweat, and tears and belief. And yeah, so.
Grandmother always thought about faith.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Faith.
Don, I know we're all Christian here, and sometimes people question whether my faith is mainstream Christian, the LDS, Church of Jesus Christ. A lot of, called Mormons for years and whatever. And one of the criticisms we get is that in addition to the Bible, we've added the Book of Mormon, and some other books of scripture. One of them's called the Doctrine and Covenants. And let me read from you Section 101 of the Doctrine and Covenants, 79, 101, 70. Therefore, it is not right that any man should be in bondage one to another. And for this purpose have I, this is God speaking, have established the constitution of this land by the hands of wise men whom I raised up unto this very purpose, and redeemed the land by the shedding of blood.
There you go. Can't argue with that.
Now, I'm not asking anybody to embrace the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints above or whatever to whatever you do now. I'm just saying that that's the kind of principles that I was raised under.
Yeah.
In a church that some Christians say is not Christian, but
Yeah.
it's right there in our book of scriptures that God established the constitution of this land by the hands of wise men whom he raised up for that purpose and redeemed the land by the shedding of blood.
Amen.
Amen. So I'm gonna finish up now with my story, which is it's from World War II, and it has to do with the 101st Airborne, the Screaming Eagles, and I found this video that I'm going to read a little bit from, and I'll play a little bit from it. But it's the Screaming Eagles were the men that were at the Battle of the Bulge when the Germans told them to surrender. And I don't know if you remember the story about the colonel. His reply to them was nuts. And so the German high command went back and scrambled over what did that mean? What does nuts mean? they didn't understand that reply too good. So anyway, it turns out the German Wehrmacht was truly afraid of the 101st Airborne. They tangled with them more than one time, and this introduction to this YouTube video where this guy goes through some of the things. He says, why did the German Wehrmacht truly fear the 101st Airborne Division? From the chaos of D-Day to the freezing siege of Bastogne, the Screaming Eagles broke every rule of conventional warfare and left a trail of German after-action reports that said the same thing. This unit does not break. In this video, we trace exactly how a division with zero combat history in 1942 became the most psychologically feared unit on the Western Front, using German military documents, officer memoirs, and firsthand accounts the standard documentaries overlook. Talks about the Battle of the Bulge, talks about their airborne training, which that was the first time that we decided to parachute people into combat. The Normandy airborne drops, where it turned out that the storm and the wind and blew them all over France, and they landed all different places with 3 or 5 of them in a group, and they managed to work their way into the German lines and do sabotage and just kill as many of them as they could in these little groups. And the Battle of Carentan, the Operation Market Garden, and he's an airborne professor, dives deeper into the most significant airborne battles of World War II, reconstructing history as it happened real time through the lens of the men who fought it. And I'll play a little bit of this video, and I'm going to share that with you guys again. So stand by here.
Couldn't be a problem. You got to practice on my stuff.
Okay, we're sharing your screen. We got that.
Commander, December 1944, Bastogne, Belgium. His division has just sent the Americans a formal surrender demand. Surrounded, outnumbered 3-1, the 101st Airborne has no food, almost no ammunition, and no winter clothing. His men are waiting for the white flag. Instead, they get one word back. Well, you know what? That story still gives me goosebumps. But here's the part that most people don't know. When that report reached German high command, a German general, Hassel von Manteuffel, read it, and according to his own memoirs, he said, and I'm paraphrasing, as was to be expected. He already knew. The entire German high command already knew. After 3 campaigns fighting against the Screaming Eagles,
And that's just a short introduction. I'll put a link to that video down below, but it is really interesting. And it's a story of, it's the story of individuals that fought in World War II and won these battles and did their thing to win the war. So, like you said, Ken, there's so many individual stories, but there are groups of individuals, and then there are armies of individuals that have done these things throughout our history. So, yeah, we have a wonderful history, 250 years. Any you guys have any last word for the country? What you'd like to say before we sign off? And I wish you all a great 4th of July, and I hope you get to take place and see all the things that are going to happen. The great thing about this is, and my last comment, there's a lot of people that are not familiar with American history that are going to get a good, strong lesson this weekend. And hopefully this stuff will catch on to the younger groups and the people that don't know a lot about the country and didn't study civics in school, which they don't teach very often now. And, it's really...
Well, if we want the next 250 to be anywhere close to the last 250, we better turn around some directions that we're headed.
Yes, sir. That's correct. So that's
we better get back to some principles that I think have been forgotten and or have even never been learned. by some of the people that are complaining about what America is or isn't for them. And it's not something, as one of the, I think Zack or Paul said, it's not something that somebody can give it to you. It's something that they sacrificed for.
Yep.
Some of them, the ultimate sacrifice. And now it's ours to cherish and maintain, but it will only be cherished and maintained by the same level of commitment as those who went before us.
Yep. Amen. Paul, comment. Zack.
Well, I think everybody needs to remember that the true meaning of socialism is communism. We
Yeah.
need to stop calling it socialism and call it what it is,
Yeah.
communism.
Yeah. So yeah, democratic socialist is just a front for communism. Yeah.
It is communism.
Yeah, exactly. Paul, we got
Yeah,
you
so
now.
I was just, you know what they say, socialism is just communism before they break out the guns.
There you go. So, okay, everybody. Thanks, guys. It's good to see all of you. I'll send you out a notice of when we're going to have an August show. I hope you all have a great month. Enjoy the 4th of July. And I say to all our people, all our listeners and viewers, and everybody in America, God bless America. We love this country, and we should all do what we can to preserve what it's about. And hopefully this weekend everyone will learn what it's about and take that to heart and be better Americans on Monday, July 6th. So God bless you guys too. And we will see you next month. Thanks, guys. Good night,
Bye-bye.
everybody.
Bye now.
Now, wait a minute, Jack. This is a friendly celebration.
I don't much like the way you celebrate.